Hello and welcome to Wrestling and Everything Coast to Coast with your host, Buddy Sotelo Esquire and the effervescent Evan Ginsberg. I always make you smile with that. So, it's just us two today, like back to old times. No guests for this evening, so you're basically allowed to just kind of go off stream of consciousness or anything that's on your mind. I have a few topics to throw out there if you are lacking of anything immediately to gab about. But of course, this is the weekend before WrestleMania, so everybody and their brother is tearing
I think
apart.
it's 2 weeks before, right?
Yeah, you're right. The 19th, the
Yeah.
19th. But with next week we have a guest, so we won't be talking about wrestling. We have a very accomplished lady wrestler, independent wrestler that was referred to us from Mike Steele from Matt Creed from the AIWF Federation, the All Atlantic Independent Wrestling Federation. So that's going to be. I'm looking forward to meeting her and having her on the show. But in the meantime, let's get the sad part, the two sad issues out of the way first. And one is friend of the show, Eric Adams. And I mean, I've got to say that I've run into a lot of brilliant minds doing this program, people who really understand wrestling. And I would say in the pantheon of the people that understand wrestling the best, Eric Adams is one of them. He really is a smart guy, gets it, and unfortunately, tragically, he lost his mother. Was it last week?
A week or two ago, and
Yeah.
I actually knew his mom. Eric's out of New York, and we know each other since he was literally a teen starting in wrestling. Johnny Rods trained him, and he's a good guy. And his mom was very, very supportive of him. And years ago, we did a GoFundMe because she had health issues, and unfortunately, she passed. And basically, he wants to bring her ashes back to New York, back home. He's down south, so they have a GoFundMe, and it's Eric ADAMZ, Eric Adams. I hope people will support it. And
Please.
yeah, and it was interesting. A few years ago, she worked for the police department. She was not a police woman, but she worked for the police department. And when we were doing the GoFundMe, I got some feedback because I was heavily promoting it because, like I said, I knew her and him, and she was a great woman. And the whole anti-police thing was in full throttle at the time. And I tell people I've known a half dozen, personally, friends and family, police in my life, and 5 of the 6 were good ones. Good ones. One was not. So do the math.
Well, we
That's
have
that.
Nikita Brezhnikov
Yeah,
on this
yeah.
show.
Former cop. And by the way, Nikita disappointed me on a recent broadcast. He was kind of making fun of my, wrestlers should get pensions, 401ks, and health benefits. And he said he was totally, he had no beef whatsoever with Vince. So we part ways on that, but we're still dear friends going back decades, proving yet again you can disagree with people, vote differently than people, and still love people in spite of it.
Yeah,
But
I'm with you on the thing because I mean, and we'll get to talk about WrestleMania, but I mean, TKO is making money hand over fist with WrestleMania. I mean, they just are. I mean, you can say what you want that they aren't selling out all their tickets. Even if they don't sell one ticket, the WWE has made money off of WrestleMania. They with the sponsorships and the ad revenue and the all the pre WrestleMania events that people are spending their money on. You know, it's such a huge cash grab, and it's not like the WWE isn't grabbing for cash all the other 364 days out of the year. You
Oh
know,
yeah, they could easily take 1% or even 0.5% of their immense profits and put it into a fund where their legends do not need GoFundMe's at the very end for hospitals to save their homes to be buried disgracefully. And Nikita makes a point that some of them made very good money at one point, but many of them did not. And on that particular broadcast that I was listening to, they were saying guys like Dominic DeNucci never broke 100 grand, and guys like Johnny Valiant never broke 100 grand. And these were stars who wrestled 300 plus days a year. So to me, the fact that this went on throughout wrestling, two wrongs don't make a right. And what do you have to do to be an employee besides work 300 plus days a year for somebody?
and it's not that the
School teacher,
WWE can't afford it. That's
of course, of
that's the
course.
part that gets me, is that the WWE turns around and plays poor and pretends like they can't afford it, where every other business is able to afford it and should. I mean, this whole independent contractor thing, Vince managed to finagle out, because he has political connections and is able to carve out exceptions for wrestling that no other industry is able to do for themselves. That has to stop. That's something that's unfair, and it's unfair to the wrestlers. It's unfair to the general public for one company to be able to skirt all the rules and regulations that adhere to all the other businesses.
Well, there are other businesses that don't have pensions, but my point would be as a school teacher, we worked 180 days a year with full pension and benefits and health benefits and everything in between. So when we did 350 days, Greg Valentine said he worked 320 days a year. Bret Hart said he worked 330 days a year. What do you have to do to be an employee besides be
And,
with somebody year after year after year and
and
work
only a
300?
few students hit you with chairs.
uh, no, but I did break up some fights in my day. But
But yeah, I mean, these guys are getting hit with chairs and ladders and, set on fire and
well,
all
that's
this other
another
stuff.
thing. I mean, wrestlers are destroying their bodies and living in pain, and living in wheelchairs, many of them. And, for example, at the end, Harley Race, Abdullah the Butcher is currently in a wheelchair. Albano was, Iron Sheik. These guys really, really sacrifice. So how do you not have health benefits for these guys?
Yeah,
And
superstar Billy Graham, obviously,
Billy
another.
Graham suffered mightily, and and once again, I mean, I just hate when the fans do they all pissed away fortunes on wine, women, and song when many of them never made fortunes, and some did piss away their money, and many didn't. Nikolai saved his money. Bret Hart saved his money. Lanny Poffo saved his money. They make these blanket statements like, it's only the wrestler's fault, and benevolent Vince, gave them the big bucks. It was interesting on the same broadcast. They were saying some contradictory things that, for example, they were saying a lot of these guys spent 100 grand a year on the road. You're talking 3 meals a day, hotels, gas tolls, etc., so on. Cleaning, laundry. I mean, so if you're spending 100 grand a year, just being on the road, it's not a massive pie that you have, and the fact
Well, then
that
you add in what the cost of drugs, for a lot of these guys were, and that, also that some of these wrestlers, I mean, they're not, I mean, we know wrestlers. We know that there are some wrestlers who are very sophisticated, very smart, very intelligent guys. And there are other guys who are, basically salt of the earth, if they weren't lifting weights and they weren't, pile driving somebody, they're not really going to be, they're not ahead of the class type material. There's a reason why, some guys, are okay with being hit on the head repeatedly with fluorescent light bulbs. I mean, again, I mean, wrestling has all sorts of different personalities to it, but some of the people who aren't, I mean, for instance, let's take Kamala for example. He wasn't a really sophisticated guy, and so the WWE found it easy to, pay him a lot less, and he would just kind of go with the flow and be okay with whatever the WWE would pay for him, even though the WWE was making all sorts of money off of toys that, had his image on it, and all the videotape sales that were made with, featuring his matches. He never got a cut of any of that. And that's why he had to have a GoFundMe to help bury him once he died.
Well, he also had incredible health issues. He had both his legs amputated. I mean, do the math as far as medical bills. The bottom line is these guys generated millions and millions of dollars. Kamala main evented all over the world with Hogan and got a fraction of what Hogan made, which, that I understand. The champion gets the lion's share, but Kamala was also sleeping in cars because he didn't have money, and the guy was a main event guy. Come on,
Yeah.
At some point, the ongoing excuse is always they all do it. All the corporations are greedy, and all the corporations are exploitative. Again, two wrongs don't make a right. Take care of your pioneers. Take care of your legends. You're making billions and billions of dollars. Triple H at the press scrums, we broke the gate once again, and the fawning alleged wrestling alleged media, they're applauding that they raised the price to 300 to 10,000 a ticket or whatnot, and it's ridiculous. I mean, give something back. These
Yes.
guys.
Now, this is not to disparage the loss of Eric Adams' mother. We kind of got off a tangent, and
Well,
again,
yeah, we'll get back to that in a second. Yeah.
even though she was with the police, she wasn't a cop. So it's
Well, the point I was starting to make
yeah.
was when I was first doing the GoFundMe, I was getting some kickback, F the police, and I said to them, look, there are bad teachers, there are bad lawyers, there are bad doctors, there are bad cops. You can't make blanket statements. I've known 6 cops, friends and family, and like I said, one was dangerous. The other 5 were good people. That one guy never pulled his gun out in his entire 25 years. He would defuse. He said, I don't want to hurt anybody. I don't want anybody to hurt me. I want to go home to my kids, and I'm not looking to hurt or kill anybody. I'm just looking to do my job. And the vast majority, that's the case. And I'm a Democrat. I'm a liberal saying this. I mean, the extreme left defund the police, man. Let me tell you, if I had a cop on every subway car in New York, I'd be happy. I'm sitting on a subway train a couple of weeks ago. This junkie pulls out a needle and shoots up in front of me. He shoots up in front of me. Me and this other guy, I'm sitting next to a total stranger. We got up because I'm thinking, shit. I'm thinking if any blood shoots in the air, I don't want this on me.
Good. Or what if he, freaks out or has a
That's
seizure?
literally right in front of me, like I'm talking to you now. I mean, I could have extended my arm and practically touched. That's how close this guy. And the guy takes out a needle on the train, like he's in his bathroom. And I'm like, yeah. Eric Adams, the mayor, is doing a tremendous job of cleaning up the trains here. Oh man. So yeah, as far as I'm concerned, the more police, the better, and protect the hardworking, honest people. I'll tell you another funny story. I'm walking down the street in my neighborhood. I live in Queens, New York, and this politician is running for local office, assemblyman or whatever. And he starts talking to me. He's trying to get my vote. And he says, what issues are on your mind? And I happened to look, behind him. And I said, turn around. And as the guy's talking to me, this homeless guy's taking a dump in the middle of the street. I said, look, I understand. I've had mentally ill people in my family. I've had friends who have been homeless and have gotten their lives back together. I said, I want to help these guys, but at the same time, you shouldn't have to walk down the street and have some guy, pulling down his pants and taking a dump in the middle of the sidewalk. I mean, you're taxpayers, and you're entitled as a hardworking, honest, productive member of society to have a certain, quality of life as well. And there has to be help for people like this. And yeah, so anyway, getting back to Eric, this is all stream of consciousness. Getting back to Eric, yeah, please help his mom. The GoFundMe is up there, and maybe we could even put the link on at some point on the screen or whatnot. But he's a good guy. His mother was incredibly supportive. It's not easy, your son has a tough career, not making a fortune of money, and she was totally behind him as a wrestler, and just a good woman, good single mom, raised her kid right. He's a good man, and I know him since he's a kid. Now he's 40ish. It's like it's amazing the years fly by. But
Yeah, no, and he's always been a good friend of the show and everything. So absolutely, folks, if you are listening to this and you can afford $5 or $10 or $20 to help out, Eric, we'd really appreciate that. And then,
and even just posting it and spreading it. I did 2 email blasts in the past
right,
week where it was part of it, and we're a community. We're a community. Vince Steele, who died in the ring the other week, they raised 16 or so, $17,000, which
that's wonderful.
is a
That's
lot of
great.
money when a family is in need. So
Absolutely,
yeah, we we
absolutely.
are we are a wrestling community, and whatever you can afford. Like my late mother used to say, she died with $600 to, excuse me, $685 to her name. My mom at age 83, she would always give to charities, what little she could, $3, $5, $1, and she used to say, if everybody gave $1, that would be the charity right there, and it's easier to turn away. It's funny, in American society, we had a terrible tragedy here in New York. This guy had 300 cats in a cat sanctuary, and it went up in flames, and he was running in and out to save the cats, and he died. He died
That's so
saving them.
tragic.
Terrible, terrible. But people love animals and love cats and love dogs, and they raised hundreds of thousands of dollars in days. So if it's animals, the people come through. If it's a hardworking, honest, blue collar woman, it's a tougher sell, unfortunately. So
Yeah, especially if the person didn't have the job that would fit with everybody. And then I also wanted to mention another sad topic, which is that this is actually today would have been the birthday of Tony Jones, my friend and friend of the show. So I also had a day of remembering Tony and thinking about him and the loss, which was just about a year ago, actually, was in, I think, May that we lost him last year.
and
And
yesterday was the anniversary of the death of Johnny Valiant. So this is
oh my
this
gosh,
this is the problem when you have friends who are quote unquote celebrities, no matter what level, you're always reminded because I'm glad they're on it and remembered on social media where there's always these reminders. This is Tony's birthday. This is the anniversary of Tony's death. This is Johnny's birthday, the anniversary. But it's still painful. It's still it brings back a lot of memories, and I'm glad they're remembered though. It's a little piece
yes,
of immortality.
yes. No, and as I've said several times, that the fact that we had him on the show, you know, is incredibly special to me. That I have something that I can, hold on to and say, this is an hour that I spent with him, and he had the spotlight, and he had the show all to himself. He didn't have to share it because Tony was not a guy that really sought the spotlight. He was such a wonderful supporting character. I mean, he had his moments, obviously, where he was in the ring and doing, in big matches and so forth. But I think Tony always thought about, like, how am I going to get this other guy over? What can I do in the ring to make him look good? And what can I, take? What can I, what sort of moves can I sell to make this guy look really like he's got it going on and that he's serious. Tony Jones was very serious in the ring. I mean, he was a lighthearted guy outside the ring. He wasn't that serious, although he wasn't one of the jokesters or pranksters with everybody. He always had a very stable nature about him outside the ring. But in the ring, there was always an incredible intensity that he brought with him. And the fact that, they called him the shooter because what he did in the ring was always something that you took seriously. He never did like any kind of comedy type stuff. He never did anything that was like zany, wacky, outrageous. It was always by the numbers. He was like a Rick Steamboat kind of guy, you know?
Yeah.
That what you saw in the ring was something that it meant to him so much that you believed it, and you believed him. As I guess it was Terry Funk said, I can't make you believe wrestling's real, but I can make you believe I am. And I always thought that was a poignant quote that really defined a guy like Tony Jones. And the world is not as bright with him gone, and it is a tougher world to be in, knowing that a guy that was a good friend of mine for over 20 years is, I can't say happy birthday to him. I can't post on his walls, pictures of his matches, or talk about, with him and reminisce about some of the great times that we had in APW, getting started. And I mean, he was part of a really big movement for indie wrestling. As you know, he was part of the Beyond the Mat movie.
Yeah.
I mean, he had a pretty significant role in that. And, he really was somebody, but that was not something he ever like big timed anyone with. He rarely ever mentioned his role in Beyond the Mat. And he never like said, "Oh, I was in WCW," or "I had some WWE dark matches," or I even saw him, as I said, face Snitsky one time live in Sacramento. I won tickets to go see, and the ring entrance took longer than the actual match itself. But he was always silently proud of what he did and always made his actions count for what he wanted to be remembered by. And a year later, basically a year later, I won't do a memorial show for him this year, kind of thing. I think thinking about him on his birthday is what he'd want to be remembered more than when he died. And it's just it's tough to think back and go and think of the lost potential and how much more life he had left to live. He was so young, and we all just didn't see it coming. And I do miss the guy a lot.
Yeah, I think what you can take from it is try to live every day to your fullest. I mean, we
And you
all have an
can't do that every day. I mean, let's face it. There's days
yeah, but I see, you know, this is another side tangent. The other day I was watching Austin City Limits 50th anniversary special, and for those who don't know, it's been on PBS literally 50 years, and they've had some of the greatest musicians in history, all genres. And what's amazing is They respect every genre of music. The musicians range from, like Buena Vista Social Club, 100 years old, to like teens coming up, every possible genre.
I can say that the one that stands out for me, because I do watch Austin City Limits, the best one that they ever did was when they had Stevie Ray Vaughan on there. He
Oh, yeah.
just clobbered that. He was so good.
They showed a clip from that. Yeah.
Yes.
So,
Yeah.
so
That was
I'm
legendary.
watching, I'm watching this, and it's playing like a loop in my head that every day of the week, these old white people, and I'm an old white person, they get on these music pages and they go, "There's been no good music since the Beatles, and disco sucks." Like they haven't recovered from disco from 1975. And rap isn't music, it's just noise. They have the same dozen albums since high school.
But
Boston
people are
Kiss.
like that, you know. I mean, there are people who will, go to a gourmet, restaurant and just say, this isn't like McDonald's. They don't make fries as good as McDonald's does. I mean,
That's
that's just
fine.
people.
That's fine. It's fine you enjoy those same dozen bands that every one of your high school or college classmates enjoyed. But don't dismiss 50 years of great music, and I have so many friends who are indie musicians, brilliant, brilliant musicians. Edwin Vasquez did the Cape Man soundtrack on Broadway with Paul Simon, Ruben Blades, and Mark Anthony. That's the
Uh,
level of musician this guy is. Okay, that he
yeah.
can hang with guys like that. You know, my friend Ned Massey was, he was getting the mega push. He was supposed to be the next Bruce Springsteen. His producer died in the middle of it. Sometimes there's bad breaks, just like in wrestling. I mean, he's done full theatrical musicals. He's written 2.5 hour musicals for the theater. That's the level of musician this guy is. Etc. So on. My friend Carlton J. Smith is an R&B musician. He plays all over the world, the most exotic, beautiful venues, literally around the world. He's a world-class musician. So my point being, the fact that you don't appreciate anything beyond,
Your
the
cats
Beatles,
aren't on
right?
fire, are they?
Yeah, it's New York, the gritty streets of New York. So the fact that you don't appreciate anything beyond the Beatles' White Album, nothing's happened since then. It's
But people are like
absurd.
that. People are, stuck in their own bubble. And I mean,
That's
as we've
fine.
we've
Enjoy
said
what
this
you
about
enjoy,
wrestling.
but
We've said
but
this
don't
about
dismiss
wrestling too.
everybody else.
But we've said this about wrestling too. There's people who will say, there hasn't been a good wrestler since 1997. That
And
the
I'll
the
tell you,
wrestling.
watch Will Ospreay's match tonight on the AEW pay-per-view, and I disagree. So
Oh yeah, no, I'm with you. But
I
again,
understand. I
again, we
understand.
have the world is just filled with people who have the inability to see beyond, what they are familiar with. And if they don't get something, served in the same TV dinner tray, from Swanson or, Hungry Man, if they don't have their Hungry Man dinner served to them at 6 o'clock, every day at a certain time, they have a huge fit. And music, like wrestling, is such a polarizing thing. I mean, people know what they like, but if they don't like, when it's something different or new or something that people are trying to introduce something that's goes against the mold of what they're used to, they tend to. I mean, some people gravitate towards enjoying it. I'm one of those people that loves things that are different and strange and outrageous. I've spent my entire life watching Adult Swim on the Cartoon Network, and even before that, I was a liquid television kind of guy. So, and even going back to the '80s, I was part of the indie rock scene that existed here in San Francisco, which was contained some pretty wild folks like the Residents and Snake Finger and the Meat Puppets and this little band that nobody had heard of called the Red Hot Chili Peppers.
Yeah,
You
yeah,
know,
yeah.
well, they were just touring tiny clubs and Fishbone. You know,
Fishbone's amazing.
yes, I know you're a big fan, but these were all just small little just bands that nobody. They weren't on major labels. They were handing out self-made audio tapes that they from their trunk were
Fishbone
CDs.
still struggles. Fishbone, when they tour, it's like a flea market. They're making money off the gimmicks. They have everything from comic books to keychains to CDs, T-shirts. That's where them. George Clinton's the same thing. George Clinton's like a store. He's got 20 guys on stage to pay. So when he plays, it's literally like a flea market. The stuff that he's selling because they figured out the business end of it. But it's a tough road for bands like Fishbone. So for idiots to go, there's been no good music since the 70s. Listen to Fishbone. Listen to some of these. Here's another thing. Okay. To me, music, it's branches of the same tree. Rock and roll came from rhythm and blues. It's all connected. So when they rage, how did you put this one in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame? I'm like, I actually like some of the R&B and rap acts more than some of the rock acts. But I like, if it's good, it's good. Let me
Well,
put it
this
that way.
ties into the whole conversation we had with Angel last week with her New England
Angel
Music Hall of Fame.
Orsini.
It's yeah, she had that same thing going on, and I think again we can draw parallels between that and wrestling itself. Where you see a lot of the resistance that some people have towards injecting lucha into Cha Cha Charlie is a good example of a guy who wants to introduce more lucha into regular wrestling. So it's not just lucha guys facing other lucha guys in a
Yeah.
lucha match. That you can use lucha style stuff in a regular match and have it be something people accept as a truly like a watchable form of wrestling. And I think that's very brave of Cha Cha Charlie to try to do that because often Hispanic wrestlers are pigeonholed into just you're a lucha guy, put on this mask, do a bunch of flippy floppy stuff. And he's a lucha guy that does strong stuff,
Oh, he's great. That guy's a total package, and I hope the ageism in pro wrestling doesn't work against him because he's not a kid. But
Yeah.
this guy could be working right now for any major promotion. I'm going to see him May 10th in Queens for the Colossal Championship Wrestling at the Elks Lodge. I'm looking forward to seeing him live again. That's like basically my backyard. It's so close to where I live, and they put on a really good show the first match. I wrote it up for Pro Wrestling Stories. Speaking of writing, I just did a piece for Pro Wrestling. Excuse me, I wrote that up for Pro Wrestling Post. I wrote a piece for Pro Wrestling Stories. I interviewed David Ayer, the director of A Working Man, Jason Statham's new movie, and I also interviewed Eddie Fernandez, who was the second unit director and the stunt coordinator. So
Wow.
it's not, these are big time players. It was nice to get an opportunity to talk with them. And it turns out Eddie Fernandez is a big wrestling fan. And David
Well,
Ayer,
stunt
actually,
coordination and wrestling go hand in hand.
that's what we talk about in the article. Check out the article. It just came out the other day. It's pretty much at the top of the website, prowrestlingstories.com. And it was interesting because one of the screenwriters is Sylvester Stallone, and he did Paradise Alley in 1978, and DiBiase and Dick Murdoch, and a ton of old school guys are in that movie. Tons of legends. So if you ever, it's probably before a lot of people's time, but check out Paradise Alley. And Terry Funk has a big part in it, and he's great. So yeah, it was nice. It was nice to we went to a private screening and we interviewed these, David Ayer did. He wrote Training Day. He was one of the screenwriter. This is a big time guy. So and very gracious and humble and respectful of wrestling. And Eddie Fernandez straight out said, "I'm a big wrestling fan. I grew up on it." So I think you'll find it, and we tie in how the stunt work and wrestling, there is a connection. We even did a little history of wrestling in the movies, going back to Pat Roach, from Raiders of the Lost Ark, and Mike Mazurki, Night in the City, great
And
movie.
Gene Bell, obviously.
What's that?
Gene LaBelle.
Gene LaBelle did tons of movies. If you see Black Belt Jones with Jim Kelly shot in L.A., it's Gene LaBelle and all the Olympic Auditorium L.A. guys, Earl Maynard, and a lot of wrestlers in there. Tanaka did a ton of action movies. Professor Tanaka, Toru Tanaka. I mean, it's a mixed bag, wrestlers and movies. But what really impressed me, I'm a cinephile. I've seen probably 85 out of the 100 British Film Institute's greatest films of all time. I just love film. And Batista in The Last Showgirl.
Yeah, no, he's made some very good movies recently.
This guy's an actor.
Yeah, he is.
There wasn't one action moment in this movie. He was just acting.
I liked him in Knives Out. I liked him in Knives Out. I thought he was good.
I think he was very smart. He slimmed down, trimmed down. He's not a big muscle guy. He's pushing 60. He's smart. He's seeing his future as an actor, not as an action star. Stallone could do it at 75 because he's a huge, action star. But Batista's seeing the big picture, and I think.
Yeah, I mean, we see how Harrison Ford, still throw his hat in the ring, but I think he's getting to the end of,
Harrison Ford's in his 80s now.
I know, but you remember he was just doing Indiana Jones like a couple of years ago. So, there's a certain level at which you have to say, and still you have Tom Cruise, trying to take his shirt off in every movie. So
well, Tom Cruise is in great shape, and he's 60, I believe. So he could pull it off. 60 and 80 are two different things. But Stallone's 75, and he looks damn good for his age. Speaking of film, this bothered me today. So somebody does an interview with Eddie Murphy, and he straight out says, I just took the money for all these films. I don't care what, I haven't read a review in 25, 30 years. I did it for the money. And I said, I posted in response, that's fine. But Dustin Hoffman at one point said, I regret doing all the bad films I did for a paycheck because that's my legacy after I'm gone. And when Eddie Murphy goes, he'll be remembered for a handful of good movies and dozens of crap movies. And 100 years from now, if you have a choice between watching Sidney Poitier films or watching Eddie Murphy films, you're going to watch Sidney Poitier films.
Man, Shrek is still going to be on TV 20 more. I think Shrek's been played more times than anything Sidney Poitier has ever done. Unfortunately,
that's good and fine, but I still say create art and don't go for the paycheck. And I have this argument with the Nakamura fans all the time. He's surfing and he's making good money and he's happy. I go, yeah, but he could have been an all-time great. And instead of being just another warm body on a card diminished by WWE, he took the paycheck. In the old days,
but I blame the WWE more for that and their, really bad booking. You
I think he coached it also.
Yeah, but if you have a piece of Wagyu, meat, you just don't make it into a hamburger. If you've got the talent that's there in front of you, you should be able to book it into compelling matches. You can't say that Nakamura doesn't have the talent to be to shine in a well booked match. But the booking with him again, and my own personal beef, and I've brought it up many times, is the way they treated Gallows and Anderson. I mean, the excitement I had when Gallows and Anderson went to the WWE at first, I was like, oh boy, they're really gonna elevate these guys and make them a household name. They made them a joke, and you've talked about them and singing with Elias, and it just. And then even after that, they brought him back. They let him go. They brought him back, and then they still didn't do anything with him. And
I saw Gallows and Anderson in Ring of Honor. They were treated as stars. They were having excellent matches. Then you see them in WWE. They're a waste of time and space. And that's I always hear people, they're always like, oh, they should get rid of this guy and get rid of her. And why don't they get rid of the ironically named creative if they can't be creative? If they have these unbelievably talented athletes who are total packages, and you can't find anything for them that's worthwhile, and they're there for literally years, then it's on creative.
I agree. I agree. And there's just at least, and we're still in this sort of nether sphere of now with TKO running things. We don't really know like who is really in charge. I mean, I think it's Triple H, but there's rumors that he's sort of stepped back from some of the creative things. So we need to find out, eventually. I have a feeling it's like a committee of a bunch of people that are now booking all this stuff. And who knows, maybe even AI is involved in all this
Triple
stuff.
H gets this genius tag, and he's on the good list. And I'm like, this guy's a pimple on the ass of Jim Crockett and Crockett Promotions back in the '80s. Their house shows were better than WrestleManias. I mean,
But then
I
he
don't.
then he flashes the cash and says, "Look at how much I made." Those guys are bankrupt, and look at how much money I'm making. And that's right now we live in a society, we live in a world where if you flash the cash and say, "This is how much money I made," people call you a success, even though artistically you're not. Even if qualitatively you aren't, quantitatively you are. And that's we're living in a society right now where the quantitative is revered over the qualitative. And I'm not sure there's ever been a time in society where that hasn't been the case, but I still feel that when I look at the indies and I see, and yeah, I'll be appearing in a show coming up soon with Wrestling for Charity. Actually, just a little bit over a month from now, I'll be doing a show here in my own hometown with my friend Butch, and we're really trying to like bring entertainment to kids and young adults that don't have anything that they can do live here in this town. And we're really trying to find something that's affordable for families, something that people can have fun at for a few hours and not spend 200-300 bucks. I mean, I guess they can if they want, but we'd be happy if they threw that money at us. But instead, we'd like a whole family to be able to go for a whole evening for under 50 bucks. It can be done, and it's something that we want to do to try to encourage people to get out and enjoy live things, because there's not a lot of that here in Marin County. And I'll be plugging that match a little bit more as we get closer to it.
All the
And
context clues tell me you're not picking us up two $10,000 tickets for WrestleMania.
yes, no, I'm still waiting for the deal that I got to go see WrestleMania 2, where it was me and my brother sat at the top for 15 bucks in the LA Sports Arena. If I can get them for 15 bucks, I'll go. Otherwise, no, I'll pass. And I mean, even when WrestleMania was here in the Bay Area and it was in San Francisco, I didn't go, because it was back then tickets were $250, and I thought they weren't even worth that much, and now they're worth thousands, and I just shake my head and move on. And it's like this with all pro sports. I mean, my uncle used to have season tickets to the Giants, and I used to go to 20 or 30 Giants games a year. Now, if I tried to pull that off, what I would pay for 20 or 30 Giants tickets, I probably could have bought season tickets back then for, it's really a lot.
If they had that exact WrestleMania lineup that they've announced so far, the 5 or 6 matches they've announced, if that was at Madison Square Garden, which is 20 minutes from my place, I would pay as much as $35 or $40 for it. Forget 300 to 10,000. It's a mediocre card. I mean,
It doesn't blow me away. And it's another, they got another, the match that should be the best, which is, I was thinking, is the triple threat match. The problem that I have with it is what I always have, is it's a triple threat match.
Yeah.
See, and I'm predicting this. I bet you CM Punk spends a lot of time like outside the ring, rolling around, selling something that he probably would never sell in a million years. But since he's in a triple threat match, I think CM Punk is
the one guy goes outside the ring and like takes a nap for 5 minutes. It's absurd.
And sells something like a headbutt for like 20 minutes. Where normally these guys getting hit over the head with flaming chairs and being pile driven from the top rope, but then they don't sell that. They hop up and they're fine with that. But then in a triple threat match, they get poked in the chest with a finger poke of doom, and they roll outside the ring, and then they just take a nap. I personally cannot stand three-way matches.
I'm not a big fan of it.
It's and tables, ladders, and chairs are beginning to really bore me because I've seen maybe about, I would say conservatively, 10,000 table, ladders, and chair matches, from indie stuff to pro stuff. And there's just so many things you can do with a ladder and a table and a chair. And I've seen it all. And it's not, it doesn't add something to what I consider. Plus, I know people have gotten so hurt in table, ladders, and chair matches that I just feel like the payoff isn't worth what you're, investing emotionally in something like this, because you're just so jaded because you've seen it so much. It's just, again, I feel that wrestling needs to tap the minds of some of the people that we have on this show, like an Eric Adams. Let's tie it back in, guys like Matt Creed and Angel Orsini and the people.
Angel's Network.
Yeah, the ECUSA TV absolutely is trying to do something different. Bring you indies, bring you stuff you'd have to search all over the internet to find. It'll all be in one place and you can find it and watch it, instead of just going from streaming service to streaming service to streaming service, maybe even having to pay, for a subscription to these streaming services. Go check out ECUSA TV and see what's in the lineup, and you'll see something different. That's what my plea.
And we're on it.
Yes, and we're different. Thankfully, I think. Enough. I think we're different enough. But anyway, so now it's even going to bring up. We have a couple minutes here. I was going to throw out there the Dark Side of the Ring has been making a lot of news with the Ludwig Borga episode that they showed.
I haven't seen it yet, but I could say that in 50 plus years of attending live wrestling, I started June of '74. The single worst live main event I ever saw was Lex Luger against Ludwig Borga on a 1990s WWF show. It was stultifying.
I can top that. I saw The Undertaker against Giant Gonzalez.
Okay.
That was really, really bad.
I saw Flair against Giant Gonzalez. That was pretty bad, but Flair could kind of carry anybody, yeah.
Right. No, this Undertaker wasn't that, advanced in his career. And so, just the two of them just stood around and like choked each other pretty much for the entire time. And then I think, they got like counted outside the ring or something like that. It was just.
Let me just say something about Luger. Luger's going into the WWE Hall of Fame. and he's on the
Not because I voted for him.
Well, let me just say this. I used to go to Philly every month for the NWA shows in the mid to late 80s, into the early 90s. And Luger was quite good in the NWA. I mean, he was horrible in WWE as a face, but in the NWA, he was in there with Flair and the Horsemen, and the guy was legitimately good, very good. I wouldn't say great. He wasn't Magnum or Ricky Steamboat, that's for sure. But he gets a bad rap because people remember that horrendous WWE title run, and he was god awful. But
Well, the whole Elizabeth thing is
and
also
that didn't help because of course. But you know, there's people in the WWE Hall of Fame far less deserving, like a Sharmell or a
Beth
Undertaker's wife.
Phoenix.
Name the great Sharmell and Michelle McCool matches. I mean, come
And
on.
the Bella twins.
The Bella twins, yeah, great wrestlers there. So, look, there's tons and tons. We always go back to Ivan Koloff, Waldo Von Erich, Spiros Arion, Dynamite
Demolition.
Kid, Demolition, Billy Eadie on his own. He's had a half dozen great runs, different gimmicks. Victor Rivera, John Tolos, Bulldog Brower. These guys were all main event guys who for decades were on top all around the world. And how are they not in? And Michelle McCool is in. It may just have something to do with being Undertaker's wife.
Yeah, politics have a lot to do with it. We've always covered that sort of thing, and we could
Not
spend
that she's a
another hour.
bad wrestler by any means, but they're
Hall of
far
Fame,
more deserving.
No. Hall of Fame, no. Anyway, we're at the end of the hour. It's another great hour of you and me, just talking what's on top of our heads. But why don't you promote your book? I'm glad that it's doing so well.
Yes, thank you. Wrestling rings, blackboards, and movie sets. I've had one, really nice interview after another. Bob Smith from PWI just interviewed me this past week. Michael McCurdy did dozens and dozens of interviews, and it's 4.9 out of 5 rating on Amazon. There's 15 reviews in there, and people just pour their hearts out because when you read it, it's not your traditional wrestling book. It's not titles and angles. I read some of these WWE books where they go for 20 pages about some inane WrestleMania angle. That's not what this is. This is wrestlers, and not just wrestling either, but the wrestling content in there, who they were as people, I mean, I was on the road. I roomed with guys like Nikolai. And when Nikolai died, Bret Hart said, quote, Nikolai Volkov was the nicest wrestler I ever met. That's a quote from Bret Hart, who met everybody. His family, they met everybody. And that's so this is what I try to capture in the book, who these people were. I mean, Johnny Valiant, to a degree, was a tortured artist, but a beautiful person. And not on this day and this time he won this belt or he lost this belt. That's been done to death.
No, I agree. And everyone, once again, go check out ECUSA TV. Check it out online. Get the app and download it. And God bless the memory of Tony Jones. And Eric Adams' mother.
And Johnny Valiant.
Johnny Valiant too.
And all the friends and heroes we've lost over the years. And many have appeared on this show. Once Angel hopefully archives this show to an even greater degree, you could watch episodes with Tony Jones, J.J. Maguire, Lanny Poffo. They're all gone and more. I mean, shows like this are a real, treasure to the fans and friends and family. You could review Raw and SmackDown, for an hour, and a week from now, it's dated. A tribute to Tony Jones to his family and friends, that's a treasure that'll be there forever.
And I treasure them too. I treasure them too. All right, we'll see everyone next week. Thank you so much. Good night, everyone. All right, that's